So let's start with KPIs. How should leadership teams think about aligning KPIs for different departments so that tech partnerships can serve the organization's objectives? And have you guys seen common missteps when setting those KPIs? Kenneth.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. So, I think OKRs, a lot of companies are using frameworks like OKRs. We've also used frameworks like the WIG, the wildly important goal. And, that seems to have a really strong impact on ensuring that kind of from the top down and also kind of horizontally across departments, there's a sense of, a mission that the company's working toward. So I think that's been really useful in our experience to be able to set the tone for what our objectives are. I think in terms of missteps, thinking about maybe a little bit too specific in terms of like what tasks or initiatives should be done, and thinking about KPIs as really more measurable indicators. So, here's the overall impact we want to see, and then we defer to people who are running, Scrum teams and owning product domains to really determine what are the ways that we can move the needle toward those KPIs instead of prescribing initiatives necessarily from the top down in all cases. So that's kind of been something where it's always a learning experience to determine, let's not prescribe tasks or initiatives, but really say, here's the overall outcome, and defer to those who kind of know their product areas best to determine really how we can get there.
Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
I think we do things pretty similar to Ken as far as giving these kind of various teams that work cross-functionally a little bit of freedom in how they go about creating accomplishing the KPIs. So one thing we really try to focus on is we don't set performance indicators that are too far downstream from the work that the individuals are actually doing. And we also really try to avoid over communicating the actual goals of what the KPIs are. The KPI is just the indicator. Are you working towards that goal? And then the KPI itself may have, something more related to revenue. So for us at Mailchimp and the product partnerships team, we focus on the number of connections to integrations or apps, things that users are kind of tying in. If you think about that, product marketing may have their own kind of upstream metrics that will tie into KPIs. So you might think of things like, social impressions, opens, clicks on emails, all the types of things you would typically see out of channels, webinar attendance. And we can fairly easily track a lot of that back to installs or connections. We know that those connections are highly related to revenue, but we don't want these different teams to focus on the revenue aspect of what they're doing. We want them to be able to work with something that's tangible and measurable to the work they're doing. And it's up to them to decide how the work they're doing contributes to meeting those KPIs.
Jamie, I love that you brought that up, simply because when I was thinking about it, the biggest thing that we have, and this may come up later, is really depending on each of us sits in a different organization. Each of us organization probably, I always like to say from your CEO and on down from the C-suite, what do they when they say partnerships, what do they mean? And really that's ultimately what matters. Some people are like, well, it's a revenue defined function, or it's maybe more of a customer success product usage defined function, or maybe it's a marketing defined function. And the beauty of the place is that you can find KPIs that kind of matter in all of those different pieces. What you really need to set out is, how do we stack rank kind of against them, and knowing that different parts of your program, and over time it may change. So in the very beginning stages, you may not, like, you may start with a top of funnel joint marketing type items in the very beginning of what you're doing, and those will be the majority of your KPIs that you map out to. And then over time, it goes into product pieces, and then it eventually turns down into revenue pieces. So like all of those pieces can be there. I think the place where people often fall is that they get so locked into the KPI, to a specific metric only being in one part, and realizing that it's a combination of all of them. It doesn't make any one more right or more wrong. It just means that over time they're going to change. I think that's where pieces like OKRs can be helpful. But again, let's not forget, I come from an organization where like they had the same KPIs going for 20 years. And I can tell you this, I can tell you some of the sellers that I used to work with when I was in product, like they knew how to game it like super well. And so I think that's also like really important to understand. It's like when it's been there long enough, people are going to know. I mean, it's math, numerator, denominator. I mean, bam, you can just kind of fudge and kind of kludge your ways through. I think it's really important to like step back and say, well, okay, like what's actually going on here? What are we actually looking to accomplish and achieve? And is that measuring it? I know I'm not getting into specifics on the KPIs, and most of these things people probably know. I still think it's important to like, at least, especially now, end of year, when we're all doing planning and everything for next year, like these should be the top questions in all of our minds. It's like, what are we looking to achieve? Why are we looking? What buckets do they actually fall into? But thanks.
We probably track KPIs, pretty much the same way as everybody. All of our product teams have product performance metrics, and presumably those all map to the overall objective of the company so that they can, meaningfully advance that goal. And this is true for the partner integration team. It's tricky for us because, metrics around partner integrations, if you're talking about like implementations, that can be like attribution is hard. Our company grew up around an API that's built to be scalable and solid and open, so anyone can build an integration. And as it turns out, anyone does. So and when we become aware of it, we do our best to support them. But it's not always clear like how and why customers are using them. What's valuable in a partner integration can also vary a lot. Is an integration strategic for some reason? Is it in place to close specific deals? Is it just low-hanging fruit, really easy to build? These are some of the ways that I think partner integration KPIs are a little bit more difficult to align with like typical product KPIs.